And we're recording. We're good to go. So, Claire, welcome to the Temple Talk. Yeah, I'm so glad you're here, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm mega excited about this. I know that everyone else is really excited about this chat and all the juiciness that you've got to share with us. And so, just to let you all know, gorgeous ladies that have joined the call as well, it's really lovely for Claire and I to have your input. So please feel free to join us in the chat, give your own experiences, relate to anything we say, ask any questions that you want, and I'll do my best to bring you guys into the chat. So it's a really kind of interactive, juicy call. It's always much more fun for us guys when you guys join in. So let's get started. So can I just say, I'm going to have to get this out of the way first, Claire. Those earrings are fucking amazing.
Oh, I know. Thank you. I've got loads of earrings coming, like a new range that I'm making, and they're all stuck in the post. And I keep like pressing the parcel force refresh button to see where they are, and they're like stuck somewhere. So I'm like,
Are these
not having
your
much.
are these
These
your
ones are
earrings?
these ones are Tatty Divine, actually, and I've had them for years. I love them, little angel wings. But I've got some crows and wolves and seals, and also ones that say witch and queen and goddess coming. So I'm like, come on
Oh,
the post.
yes. I am so excited. I absolutely love those. And I'm just like getting this weird obsession now with like really goddessy and animal-y earrings. And I've got some, like, I don't usually wear earrings at all, but I got these for my 40th. So I'm really getting into the whole
Oh,
earring
gorgeous.
game. Never worn them before. But when does Claire make them or she's ordered them? Yeah, it's the one she's wearing here, Mara. She got from somewhere else, but she makes them and she's got some being ordered. But we'll talk about where you can get Claire's stuff after because she's got some absolutely gorgeous merch, all
You know,
related to women and women empowerment.
I did a big talk at a serious conference, and I was one of the panel, and everyone else was getting asked these big, like, deep questions about life, and everyone was like, "Where did you get those boots? Where's that dress from?" I was
That's brilliant, but we need it. We need it. We need to break it up. Yeah, so but it's exactly the same actually because I'm training under Layla Martin at the moment. So I'm in a really deeply intense sex and relationship training. And then sometimes I can't concentrate. I'm just looking at her earring game. And I'm just like, Kate, just concentrate on sexuality and all the deep content of the neuroscience and deep tantric messages. But sometimes I'm just like, those fucking earrings are brilliant. So yeah, I've got an earring
like,
obsession now.
it's like beautiful symbols as well, isn't it? And it's like dressing in all your own mythology and stories. So I think it is important, isn't it?
Yeah, but it also just makes you feel like a goddess when you dress like that, doesn't it? And I think we all need to own our shit more and more and dress like goddesses in whatever that means for us. So you're totally right. It's important. Okay, so let's get started. Yes, dress like a goddess, says Niamara. Okay, so Claire, you have been running sister circles for 27 years. You don't look old enough to have been running circles for 27 years. So tell me more about
Oh,
that. How did you get started and what was life like when you started? Because that would have been like, I can't do the maths, but before women's
no.
circles was a thing.
Yeah, well, I just trained in group therapy as a group therapist, and I was working in Blackburn House, the Women's Centre in Liverpool, as a receptionist while I was training. And I just noticed loads and loads of women were coming in really isolated. And when I used to ask them, what's your story, what's your dream, what would you really like to be doing, they just seemed to light up, and they were lonely and longing for spaces where they could chat about their dreams. So I couldn't really find anything that was going on, so I just set them up in I had a little flat in little housing association flat in Faulkner Street, and everyone used to just pile in there on cushions on the floor and
Amazing.
share stuff. But I suppose the landscape was that there was a lot of political feminist stuff going on at the time, and there was lots of lesbian feminism stuff going on. There was lots of political circles meeting. So I think to just acknowledge that, although it felt like there wasn't many women's circles going on, I think there's always been women meeting in circle, whether it was round the kitchen table with a cup of tea or over the fence talking to the woman next door and chatting to their mates. But also, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, really, and women who did all the protesting in the 60s and 70s, and women from indigenous cultures. So I think, people go, well, you were doing women's circles before anyone else, but I think I wasn't. I think women just didn't call them that.
Yeah.
But there's always been women meeting in circle and supporting and sharing stuff.
Yeah, and from doing it back then and doing it in the way that you were doing it in your little flat and with everyone just coming in and sharing dreams and stuff, what did you learn? What was your experience of it?
I think at 21, I thought I knew a lot more. Now I just feel like I don't know anything, and that's fine. I feel like I know a lot less, because I think when you're 21, you feel like, I've got all this wisdom. I studied feminist theology and goddess stuff at university, and and now I feel like the more older I get, the less I know,
Yeah.
and the more I'm just in the wonder of life, and the more just about turning up and holding space, really, without having to feel like I know a lot or I am someone.
It's such a beautiful place to be then, that really, isn't it, in terms of space holding, because it almost makes you like an empty vessel. So if you're not there to like fix anyone or feel that you've got some wisdom that you have to particularly share, or you can just be that kind of, and I think that's a really lovely message for all women, really, isn't it? It's like, without having to have that urgency to be knowledgeable or have something to share, but just be like, I don't fucking know, but I could just love the shit out of you in this space. And I think it's a really beautiful
Yeah.
gift, isn't it?
And then I suppose just I counted up, and I think I worked with about 30,000 women over those 27 years.
Wow.
And I think like I've made loads of mistakes. I've messed up loads. I've done things that I do a lot differently now, and I'm sure I'll keep on making mistakes and stuff. But yeah, just and I remember I was involved in Gather the Women about 20 years ago, where loads of the big mamas of women's circles got together. And I don't know whether you've read anything by Jean Shinoda Bolan, who has written some big books about women's circles and women's spirituality. And we had a big chat about all the women's circles that had gone wrong and were a nightmare, and like women had been fighting at them, or they'd been like, and she said, oh, once I ran this retreat and I called it Into the Arms of the Goddess. She said, and it turned out like the armpits of the goddess. It just was terrible. It was like a nightmare. And I think in all those years, there's been lots of those times when I've just felt like tested to the hilt, and I suppose it just makes me like take life less seriously and know that we're all just dead fallible, and to just laugh more, I suppose, and not take myself so seriously.
Yeah, do you know, it's such a lovely, lovely message. And I think as space holders and women that hold other women, we can put so much fucking pressure on ourselves to be perfect or to be sorted, whatever sorted means, or to be there, whatever there means, and all of that stuff. And actually just showing up in our authenticity and our honesty and being exactly who we are is a real gift, because then it gives other women permission to be exactly who they are as well. And that's what I've kind of learned quite a lot in my much less than 27 years running women's circles. But like I kind of branched out into retreats in the last couple of years, and sometimes the things that have happened on retreat, the things that have happened on retreat are just like, oh my god, you couldn't write them. But all of them have been lessons for me, absolutely all of them. And a lot of the time I've taken on the problems like as mine and almost apologized so much because it's my retreat and I could have done this. But actually what I realized is sometimes when I've taken that problem on as mine, one, I've taken something that didn't belong to me, but also taken the ability for the woman who was experiencing that thing not to process that herself, because I've almost gone, sorry, I'll take that, and I'm almost doing everyone's processing for them. And sometimes the biggest gift is just to go, I'll take responsibility for the bits that are mine, but this is a process
Yeah.
that you can go through with yourself. But so that was a massive lesson for me, when things go wrong, not always taking it completely on, just taking the piece that you could learn from and be responsible for, but not, and I think we can do that as women, can't we, a lot.
And I think talking about mistakes we've made and things that have gone wrong are really good because, trying to be perfect or thinking you have to get to a certain level before you can do something puts a lot of people off doing things and going for their dreams.
Yeah,
And when you hear other women and also big, great women like Jean was talking about that, you just think, oh, that's just a natural part of life. And, that happens to everyone, however experienced you are or however brilliant you are at holding space. So I
yeah,
think just sharing that, it's just so liberating and permission
yeah.
giving as well.
Exactly. And so many women who might think, oh, I've got to be this to be able to do that. Actually, they
And
could just probably do it
women's
right
circles
now.
are women's circles and spaces are messy. Women are messy and layered, and there's so much shadow in women's circles that's not talked about. So all that is gonna come up, and
Yeah.
it's difficult, but it's the juice of it all as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And I suppose the more willing women are to discuss those shadows or stand there in that realness, the more
Mm.
those wounds can be healed, like the comparison, the jealousy, the lack of trust, all of that bullshit that belongs to, like, we all carry a little piece of that, don't we? And
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, but then I suppose the other side of that is we all have a lot of like of that kind of fawning mentality as well, like being really lovely to each other and and being the good girls and all of that, which is sometimes a mask for the ability to get messy and get
I feel
real.
like there's so much jealousy, isn't there, in the world of women's spirituality and women, and also like looking up and making people something that they're not,
Yeah,
or not stepping into our own power and all that. And we ran a women's circle once called the things we don't talk about in women's circles, and it was a whole session on what don't we say in
amazing.
here. And it was so juicy. It was like we should always call that this, because that's that was really magic. What don't we bring to women's circles? What don't we say?
Yeah. And was that going into almost like the forbiddens, like the things that we don't talk about, like shame and things like that, or
Yeah, and all of jealousy and not feeling enough and being angry and welcoming all those things into the circle rather than it just being a space where we're all calm and centered and balanced and
yes, and it's such
just being
bullshit, isn't
real,
it?
really.
Yeah,
Just being real and showing up and being real.
yeah, and I think you're totally right, because there's certain emotions that you know they're the prettier of the emotions, or they're the much more kind of palatable of the emotions, aren't they? Whereas jealousy's, we see that as really fucking shameful, don't we? It's quite ugly, like I'm jealous. It almost seems like no one wants to admit jealousy, do they? But it's so strong and it's such a fierce emotion. And I know that I've personally done a lot of work around jealousy myself and still not kind of completed my jealousy piece at all, but I'm much better at understanding where that comes from and how to deal with that when it comes up. But there's certain emotions that are just like, we don't discuss that as much because it's not as pretty. And
And it's so, I mean, I've said to people sometimes, you know what, I was dead jealous of you when I met you. And I thought, I had the feeling that you were this or that. And people are just like, oh, I'm so relieved because I thought you hated me or da da da. And all these things are just truth telling is such
yes,
permission giving, isn't it? And
yeah,
it just breaks down all those things that, you know, we mask. And
Yeah, and I think you're really right there that people can make a story out of something based on your behaviour, because I come from a teaching background, and I went on a course that was specifically about raising the attainment of girls, and it went into the neuroscience of a woman's brain, and it was why we had to treat girls in the classroom differently to boys. And one of the things that stood out for me, which now I kind of take into women's circles as well, is that we've got certain connectors between our brain, I think they're called neurons or whatever, but that connect certain parts of our brain that the male brain doesn't have, which means that we make fucking stories out of emotions. So we read faces, and if we don't understand the emotion, we make up something that goes with it. So, you know, if a woman kind of looks at us like, you know, well, she doesn't like us. So the reason that that came up in teaching, it said, be really careful, like when a male student walks into your classroom and you look like you've got a pissed off face on, the male student will go, oh, Mrs. pissed off today. But the female student will go, Mrs. pissed off today, she doesn't like me. And so we've got to be really fucking honest as women, because otherwise we fill in the gaps.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I work a lot with young women in schools with circle work, and it's complicated because at such a young age there's so many layers and things hidden, and you know, girls can be so complicated. And one of them said to me, you know, Miss, all this sisterhood stuff is shit. And I was like, you know, you're right, you've got a point, tell me more. And she was like, well, it's fucking shit because you know, there's so much bullying and there's this and there's this. And we had a really good discussion because, you know, I have spent my life holding women's circles, and sometimes sisterhood is shit. You know, and it is damaged, and it is in a patriarchal system, and sometimes it's the worst thing as well, you know, as the best thing. So I don't like to glamorize it about, you know, sisterhood will save the world or anything, because I think it's powerful, but it can also be dead difficult.
And I love that. And that's what I love about you, just generally, you know, like when you've kind of jumped into my inbox at times when I've kind of struggled and stuff, you're the one that just cuts through things in just the realest way. And it makes me always feel like, you know, when someone just gets a knife and just cuts through bullshit and just makes something really real, and they're the kind of people I really value in the world. So even though, you know, my interactions with you have been quite minimal, when you have interacted with me, it's always been like, oh, thank fuck for you. So,
well, do you know what? I'm perimenopausal, and I just dread to think what I'll be like when I'm like postmenopausal, because I just can't hold back anymore. I just have to say it as it is all the time.
oh, this is great though, and we need more. We need more of this, so much more in a world where we have so much glittery spirituality. I think the more truth tellers and the more real people, the better. And it's comforting, and it's safe, and it feels authentic and genuine, and I think we need that. Joe's just put, it is complicated. She's talking about sisterhood, giving honesty and giving ourselves permission to just be and own it. Okay, so can we move on, Claire, to the storytelling? So where did that aspect come into your experience in your sister circles? And
I think women's circles have always been, for me, about making space for people to tell their stories. And I've always done a lot of exercises creatively within the circles that encourage people to tell their story in different ways. You know, we paint our stories. I'm an artist, so always encouraging people to make marks and tell their stories with symbols on a canvas or while we're making things. So I've always loved and fascinated by hearing someone's story. You know, how did they get to be like they are? You know, what's their story? How did they fall in love? What happened then? What was next? I'm fascinated by how someone got to be where they are in the world. And I've always told stories as a way of teaching. So whether it's stories of my own life or stories that I've heard or fairy stories. So yeah, and then about 6 years ago, I don't know how many people have got the little book here, read Women Who Run with the Wolves, but I know that it was a very powerful book for me when I was starting out. And a lot of people have got it on their shelves, but have never read it because it kind of looks good on your shelf.
I'm one of those. I remember I put like a kind of like found it in India when I was just like, years ago, when I was just kind of coming to this epiphany about women's empowerment, and I bought it, and I've read two of the stories. So even though it's such a quintessentially like women's empowerment book, I've read two of them, and it's one of those I always mean to go back to. So I'm a little bit of a closet, haven't read it properly.
There's something about it that is really powerful, but it's like a big thing to read or to enter into. And I once ran a workshop for like 50 women in London around it, and they were all ringing me the night before going, I can't come, I've not ever read the book, I meant to read it before I came to the workshop. And I was like, no fucker has ever read the book from cover to cover.
I'm
No
so
one's
glad
read
you
it.
said that.
It's like, no one's read it, just turn up. And also it's really academic, so it's
It's so
overwhelming. Like,
deep. Yeah.
and each sentence is like a year-long workshop. It's so rich, and it is difficult to read on your own. So I went to train with Clarissa Pinkola Estes in America, for myself really, but also I felt like it was being taught quite academically as well. We were sitting in a room and it was being taught in an academic way, so I knew that I could translate that in a really real Scouse liverpudlian way that was simple and made sense for people. So when I came back, I started teaching it and really loved it, and people really loved the stories. So that was about 6 years ago.
What was
And
she
yeah,
like, by the
there's
way? What's she like as a woman?
very fierce.
Fierce.
She's, fierce, and very boundaried. And I mean, I thought because of the work that I'd done myself and the way that I teach, we might be running through the Colorado woods and canyons, and smearing paint on our faces and everything. But she is an academic, and she's in her late 70s, I think. So to be taken seriously, she had to be seen in that way. So she teaches like on a raised stage, and you take notes, and
Right,
you're
okay.
there for like 9 hours a day. So it's almost like being at uni and taking notes. And but I knew that I could translate it in a really juicy, creative way, that would make sense to the people that I worked with and the communities that I worked with. And I wanted to take it into prisons and hospitals and schools, and I love the fairy stories, and I love all the
Just,
characters in them. And
just what a beautiful gift for you to do that, to take that like precious, precious information and digest it and then reinterpret it in a way that fits, like, yeah, like you said, just people that do need to hear that, because that's sometimes my gripe with really precious work. It's created in a way that you have to have a certain mind to be able to translate that. And it's like, fuck, if everyone could just know this.
I think that's been one of my pieces of my life's work that I'm only just realizing, is to be able to take something that may be like a concept from spirituality or something and translate it in a really down to earth way, so that I can go into a prison, or I can go into a school, or I can go into a secure unit with young lads and make it make sense in a really simple way.
Yeah.
So it becomes theirs and they can take ownership of it. And some of the lads have said, I've carried on telling that story for years, and I've told it to my kids, and
Oh,
you told me that when I was 12, and because now some of them are like taller than me, who I went in and worked with when they were young. So yeah, the
such a
stories are complicated.
beautiful way, isn't it, to kind of communicate important, vital life messages, to teens, to young women, because there's a tendency for whatever you have to say, like if you just stand in front of them and be like, don't do this, do that, think about that, consider that. If you're telling something in a really beautiful metaphoric story, it's almost like singing it to them or speaking to them while you're stroking them on the head. There's something
Yeah,
so gorgeous about
yeah.
storytelling, isn't there?
I've always been really rebellious against this is the 10 ways to success. If you do these 5 things, and especially working in Liverpool in really rough prisons and stuff, people would have just told me to fuck off. So
Yeah.
I always went in as, like a storyteller, and And stories, you know, it's well known that stories are what captures our imagination. They're the first way we learn. You know, if we're lucky enough, the first time our imagination was captured was like a parent maybe reading us a story, or us picking up a book and being enchanted. It's like a portal into spirituality, really, isn't it? When
Yeah,
we read a book and go into a different world, it's like a meditation.
absolutely. And
Takes
so,
us from ourselves to a different world.
yeah,
Because I was going to say to you, can you remember the first story that you were told or that you loved when you were little?
yeah. Do you know? I don't know if it was the first one, but I remember kind of, yeah, the first stories that I picked up of my own. Like they were what are they called? Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Those ones, and Judy
Oh,
Bloom.
wow.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love those ones.
And I always say, like, you know, what was it about that story that captured you, do you think? I mean, I've never read those books, but what was the essence of it that you loved about it?
I remember
Can you
exactly what it
remember?
was. Yeah, in Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. It described her being at her dad's house and staying overnight. So it was the first
Mm.
story where I identified with the protagonist who didn't live with her dad, for one, because I didn't live with my dad, and so it was like, fuck, someone else is from a broken home. And she was a teenager and she was struggling at her dad's because she had a period, and she had a period in the
Mm.
bed, and she was navigating how to clean the bed sheets without her dad finding out that she'd had a period. And it was just so real, and I was like, this happens to people, like this happens to people, not just me, you know. And it was just yeah, Joe said Judy Bloom, she spoke to a generation. Yeah, and it just felt really fucking real for me, just like other people have periods on bed sheets and other people don't live with their dads. Like for me it was just like yeah.
And when you look at the work that you're doing now in the world, do you think it's got any relation to that story that was so important to you when you were young? Like maybe around sharing your experiences so people don't feel so alone with something that they're going
Yeah,
through, or
that's exactly it. And I think, I mean, what I pride myself on, and I hope that's what women would say about me and my work, is that when we talk in circles, I am so honest about what I have to say and share. And I do bring in my own experiences. And a lot of the time people say, thank you so much for like sharing that about you. And thank you for being so honest. And so, yeah, God, that's exactly it.
I mean, so you are that girl that you loved so much in that story and that we're drawn to, and it's probably influenced the whole of your life, really, and how you show up in the world. So,
Yeah.
you know, stories are so powerful. My favourite was The Magic Faraway Tree. So, an Enid Blyton book, and it was about kids who went up this magic tree, and I've got this magic tree in my garden behind me, that's
My
like that
God.
magic faraway tree. And at the top of the magic faraway tree is all these different worlds that they could escape to.
Mm.
And it was really scary in our house when I was little. So the fact that you could open the book and be taken to these different worlds, these magical worlds, was so powerful. And it's definitely like I live with a magical tree in the garden. And part of my work is about creating spaces where people can take themselves to a more magical place, even if it's just for an hour or two. So I think those early stories are so important to us.
Yeah, do you know, and I've never really, I mean, although reading and storytelling has always been important to me, I don't think I've ever really considered how much they've shaped my being and my world and what I value and who I am as a person. Yeah, that's
And our
amazing.
first learning, like our first beautiful way of learning about the world, was with stories. And Clarissa says that whoever you are, whether you're the Prime Minister or the Queen or, you know, someone high up, whoever you are, when you listen to a story, it's always from the heart of a child.
Mhm.
And I've definitely found that to be true, you know, when I work in businesses or government doing my work and I read a story, you know, often the men like loosen their ties or like will like
Mm.
cozy up a little bit or lean in, and it's like you can see those little boys and girls listening to the
Oh,
story. So I
so
love that
magic.
idea that when we're being told a story, we always listen with the heart of a child.
Yeah. And is there something there then as well, that if you're listening with the heart of the child, then they could be healing in the fact that things that you might have stored as a child, like in the primal brain, could be kind of reintegrated because you're kind of absorbing it at a much like kind of, through the inner child state, and anything you're holding there could be healed. And
Definitely, definitely. And it's the same with when we share our own stories, isn't it? There's a poem about my dad that, same with poetry, art, stories. So I remember I always used to read this dad poem at big conferences where I knew there was a lot of men, and they'd come up crying afterwards, saying, you told the story of my dad there when you told that story of your dad. And I think stories connect us. They're like a big web, and we're all, the world's just made up of stories and interwoven stories, and how we're all little bit parts in each other's stories, and our stories, because we've met someone, that leads to something else, and all the stories of the world are connected in a big web.
yeah, it's such a magical idea and a magical thought. And something that came to me then was something that someone had said to me a little while ago. I think it was in a Russell Brand interview with somebody who was talking about death. And she said that there's two deaths of a human being. And the first one is the day they die and leave their physical bodies. And the second one is the very last story that's ever told of them in the world. And it just made me go, fuck, like,
Isn't that beautiful? So
so
beautiful.
powerful, isn't it? Like, to imagine that, as long as there's a story of you, then you are in the world in some way, and that takes me then to a question that I have for you, which is the legacies of stories and how we keep things and experiences and ideas alive through story. And the fact that so many stories about women, I'm particularly interested in women's sexuality, women as the heroine, women. Where the fuck has that all gone? Like, what happened to those stories? It was the kind of, the burning of the books when the patriarchy came more into play, or, what do you feel about that?
I think our stories were rewritten for the patriarchy and capitalism, and I think our heroes and sheroes, like in the course that I run, the women all fall in love with Baba Yaga, who is the witch in the woods, and like
Yes,
we're all
that's the one
team
I've
Baba
read.
Yaga. So we're all like team Baba Yaga, be more Baba Yaga. And this is what all our parents told us to: don't go in the woods because Baba Yaga lives in there. She's the scary witch. So it's like reclaiming those heroes. And, La Loba is another one. They're all different kinds of crones, I suppose. And, they're fat and they've got hooked noses, and, they swear a lot, and they're just like everything that this society and even women's spirituality and some women's circles reject. They're not in our images of women's circles.
Yeah.
These women, they're like, we might turn our nose up a bit if they turned up in our circle, but they become our heroes, and that's a really beautiful thing. But
Yeah.
I also feel like, go on.
No, I was just going to say, kind of like, that that kind of woman to be at the helm of Women's Circle. It makes us feel like, because we have this kind of champion on physical beauty, and there's a whole spiritual sexuality thing going on, isn't there? It's like we're really beautiful, and also we're spiritual, and also we can get our like here, and and
Yeah.
actually, there's the big fucking mamas, don't give a fuck about mascara, and it's like,
Baba
oh
Yaga
yes.
is like Baba Yaga is like an antidote to anything that's sanitized, and the women's spirituality movement is sanitized. She like doesn't give a fuck. And yeah, it's like helping women and men fall back in love with the power of those heroes. And I love Clarissa talks about her thighs were like mountainous, and her hips were like big pillows, and
Love
it
it.
just makes us fall in love with all that again. But I do think that stories are written of their time, and even these stories in this book, really, we need new stories. We
Mm.
need to be writing new stories with new endings and new heroes, because some of them are dated,
Yeah.
So we need. I don't know whether you read any Nagita Gill.
Oh, I
I've
know
got
that
her book
name.
here.
Looking up at my bookshelf.
Fierce Fairy Tales, it's
Oh no.
called. And this is all about rewriting the fairy tales so that, Goldilocks walks out of anger management because she just can't be fucked and she wants to get angry. And, they're just brilliant.
Very
So we
good.
love them. So I'll share them with you as
This is
well.
brilliant and so important for young girls as well.
Yeah. And so my work is about, like, here's a story, how if you lay your own story next to it, um, it enables you to write your own story and write your next chapter. And so it's a portal, and it's a way in for people to write their own stories and to
So
see their own
beautiful.
lives as juicy and magnificent, and with shit chapters and
Yeah.
challenging chapters. And yeah.
How gorgeous. And so and so on your course, because you're making me want to do your course, and I'm sure there's other women in the group that are listening to this. It's just kind of like, I don't know, just made me remember the beauty of storytelling and the power of storytelling as well. So what would your course look like? Like in a nutshell, what would you do?
Well, for years, people have been saying, will you do an online course? And I was really resistant to it. I didn't want to do it. I love being in person with people. I love creating magical spaces. My spaces always have, like, things I've collected over the last 26 years. So they're always full of, I don't know whether this was something of my age that you might not identify with, but I used to visit these old ladies in our street who lived on their own, like spinsters. They were probably
Mm.
wild lesbians, but my mum used to just say, oh, she lives alone, she's got a terrible life, she's lonely. She was probably having a great time. um, so I used to visit them, and they'd have all these ornaments and, like, magic things, and they'd bring out a box of chocolate for you to choose something from, and they'd have all books and stuff. And I used to love going to visit them in these magic houses, and I feel like I've recreated that in my circles. So I have these boxes of magic that people open up, and all these weird statues I've collected over the years and stuff. But so I was resistant to online stuff, but in January, I started one, and it's been so amazing. So we've launched another year-long one of these story courses called Fairytale Medicine, and we look at a story out of the book a month, and we all travel through the story together, and we look at the music of the story, the smells, the crystals that might go with it, the herbal teas that we might drink while we're listening to that story. And I got loads of really diverse people to read the stories, so you can listen to the bedtime story being read to you overnight
Oh, so
by,
beautiful.
like, young girls and trans women and women of colour and women from all different accents. So it's really beautiful and diverse. And
And just as a kind of digression
go on.
there, and I want to come back to hearing more about the courses, but
Yeah.
just you talking about trans women, and I know that inclusivity is really important for you, isn't it? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that the women's movement was always about, it was very political. And I think we've lost some of that. I think some of women's circles has become about, no, we're not political, it's just a sacred space.
Yeah.
Whereas the sacred is about political. If we're not talking about that and standing up for our sisters and inequalities, then what the fuck are we doing?
Mm.
So I do feel like that we need to always fight for that. And someone said to me, well, whoever turns up to their circles is who's meant to be there.
Mm.
And I was like, really? Like, whoever turns up to your circles is who's got the flyer or who you've marketed it to. So I like to think like who's not in my circle and why, and how can we open the door and invite them in.
Wow, that's such
And
an interesting way to look at it.
you know, a trans woman who was in our group said to me, you know, I was frightened of coming to this group for years because I've been told that women in women's circles hate trans women and that I would be asked to leave, and I was so frightened of coming, and I was so heartbroken and furious. You know, that now we've got like a little stamp that we made for women's circles and red tents that say trans women welcome, and I wish we didn't have to do that, but there are a lot of circles that won't accept trans women to sit in them.
And
That I
that's so right. That's so
that I
right that we
feel
do that. We
furious
want to
about
do that as
this.
well.
I feel like furious. It's like such mean girl behavior. It's like, you don't look like we want you to look, and you haven't got the same experience as us. And we've learned so much by having lots of trans women in our groups, and you know, the world's a changing place and we can learn so much. And you know, we've learned so much about hormones from trans women. They really know shitloads about hormones and the effect of them on your body. So people go, yeah, it's okay to have trans women in a circle unless you're talking about periods or unless you're talking about womb stuff. But no, why is it? Like, we welcome all experiences and all women, and there's still loads of work to do to make our spaces more inclusive. So it's an ongoing work that I'm not perfect at, but to feel that there are women's spaces that say no trans women welcome, like, breaks my heart so much.
Yeah, mine too. Almost like so actively, you know. And I think I could definitely be in the band of not really considering inclusivity, but you know, to be in the band of making that decision is another level, isn't it? And yeah, and I think it's a real eye opener for everyone, and not just in women's circles, but just in society in general. Just like, you know, as our society's changing, as the world's changing, just having that that consideration. I've got a friend who's just so passionate about that, and you know, I often go to her with, okay, how can I change my life? And can I be wet? She pulls me up on things so much, and I'm really, really grateful. I'm like, and she's like, I'm really sorry. I hope you don't think I'm being twee here. And I'm like, no, you're fucking not. You know more than me. I'm not aware of it. And I'm considering that. Like, keep pulling me up, keep pulling me up, keep teaching me, because I really want to learn and know what I'm doing that maybe.
And also something that I've started to do, and I want to do more, is that if I am invited twice to something or a conference or to speak, you know, is looking at who's not in the room, who's not being invited to speak. And, you know, is there any Black women being invited to speak at that?
Yeah.
Is there any women of colour? You know, do I need to speak twice at something? Like, if you said to me, can you come on again, Claire, because we really enjoyed what you said, I might say, well, there's this amazing woman who hasn't got a voice, who needs platforming. So using your leverage and any power that you have to invite someone else onto the stage or someone else in the room, and thinking, my ego doesn't really need to stand up there again. That woman needs showcasing, because she won't be able to open that door.
Yeah.
You know, she hasn't got that privilege that I've got. So also thinking about that, you know, do we really need to win Woman of the Year again? Do we ever need to win it? You know, who needs to be up on those stages, and whose voices need to be being heard? So
it's so important and such a powerful message. Yeah, and thank you so much for being someone who considers that and talks about it as well, because it's so easy to forget about and to dismiss, but so fucking important, isn't it?
I walked out of the last, I was invited to this Woman of the Year award, and everybody was just drinking champagne and having a great night, and oh, you know, aren't we great? And I just felt like, how much money is being spent at this? And you know, I wanted to just hold a party in the street for like refugees or something with the money, all those amazing women and our mums who were just in the kitchen and that, and just thinking, really, having first place, second place, third place in an award system, isn't that just patriarchy? And do we need to win the award and set against each other? And yeah, so
Yeah,
so
and what is a successful woman? Like you said, you know, what about the woman that's at home, like single-handedly raising 6 children? Yeah, yeah. What is success? It's
so that's a
really,
learning for me, because I suppose when I was 22, I'd have been like, oh yeah, I'm Woman of the Year and I've got this award, and now I just think, oh fuck all that, you know.
mm,
And I like being at the edges, you know, with the women at the edges is usually where the magic is and
yeah,
where the work's getting
very
done.
true, very
Mm.
true. I'm just going to go to some of the comments, Claire. So Kelly put, yes, stories are the lifeblood of our being. They root us in time and grow with us like branches on a tree.
How
How
gorgeous.
beautiful. And Lisa was like, that was mine too. I think she's talking about Judy Bloom. That was mine
Oh.
too, and how I found out about periods, and I couldn't believe that would happen to me. My parents never talked about it. My other book I remember was Flowers in the Attic. I don't think I've read Flowers in the Attic. The reason I keep looking at periods on my bookshelf,
See if you've got it.
flowers, I've got one about flowers that someone's recommended to me and I bought it and I've never read it. I have a bit of book anxiety going on. I love fucking reading, but I'm scared that I won't be able to read all the books that I want to read in my lifetime. And so sometimes I'm
I
like,
do. I've got that anxiety, like it must be a real disorder. I have, like, my life is not long enough to read everything I want to read. And I've just got like so many piles of books
yeah.
everywhere. I've just written a blog about carrying piles of books everywhere I go,
Yes, my
because
bedside table, I've got my bookshelf up there with some. I've got some others in the front room, and then my bedside table is all the ones that I've kind of tapped
yeah.
into and tried to read. And then sometimes someone goes, "Oh, have you read that?" And then I go, "No, don't tell me anymore. I've got all the reading that I need to do on my course, and all the ones that people suggest. And then there's just more and more and more, and it's like, fuck, I'm not gonna have
And what
time."
I encourage, you know, myself to do really is less self-help books and more stories and
Mm,
fiction, because there's so much magic in there, that will teach us more than and stay with us more than those things will.
mm,
So sometimes it's good having self-help books with reassuring titles,
yes.
but mostly it's those juicy fiction stories that are so healing. And
They are healing. They are. They really are. Like, I've always been a reader, but when I kind of started on my like personal development journey, and then even more now, kind of working with women and wanting to know a lot about women's empowerment and blah blah blah, and I've kind of like for a while I was like, don't have time for fiction anymore. Need to be learning. Need to be learning. And so why would I pick a fiction book up when actually I could use that time to do some more learning? And all of a sudden, I realized that that joy for reading had gone. At bedtime, I'm fucking learning about the neuroscience, and I'm like shit. And then, since lockdown, me and my friends have started a book club, and they're so passionate about reading, and they've just put this incredible literature in front of me. And then all of a sudden I've just been lulled back into this world that I've forgotten. I was like, you know, the beauty of a woman and what she experienced in this life that she led. And it was like, oh, yes, that's it. That's what I need. And I suppose that's the difference between the yin and the yang, isn't it? The yang's like personal development, success, like learn about this, move forward. And the yin is
yeah,
like, just
yeah.
stay and be in the present, love and
Yeah,
flow.
and
And
also, you know, I think a fiction book teaches us that, you know, even if we're in a really difficult chapter of our lives, it's part of a bigger story.
Mhm.
Sorry, my garden's getting noisy. um,
I want to be in your garden.
that there's another chapter and there's a twist in the tale to come, and all the beauty of that. So they're just rich learning, and they stick with us a lot longer than the 12 ways to heal your life. And I think they also teach us that life is like secular. It's not about learning something and then you're complete. It's like a journey where we revisit places, and
Mm,
um, it's a lot more a feminine energy of the
mm,
stories of our lives, rather than, you know, you learn this and then you're complete, and then,
yeah.
you know.
Claire, can I just say that you're one of those people that just puts everything in perspective to a point where you make everything feel okay? And you have that such beautiful energy that makes you want to cry a little bit and just like snuggle up in your boobs or something.
We do. We have little kitten piles where we all snuggle in our groups, and that's something that we are missing in this time, just snuggling into each other really as well.
Yeah, yeah, and other people have echoed that.
No.
So Amy's put bringing tears to my eyes listening to Claire speak. This is so beautiful. And Nimora's put yes, me too. Yes, she does. I want to hug her. And she's also
Oh,
put, Kate, will you put the two books Claire mentioned in the email or something? I can't be trusted to do that, Nimora. But
I'll
Claire, would
send
you
you.
say them again?
So, so there's the Fierce Fairy Tales by Nikita Gill, and anything that she writes is amazing. They're more like poems, but they're beautiful. So I don't know whether you can see that, Nikita Gill.
Yeah, that's really clear. And what was the other one you mentioned?
I can't remember now. Do you mean The Women Who Run with the Wolves one?
Oh, she must. I think it was that one. Yeah, I think that's the other one.
Maybe.
Yes, she's put yes. Women Who Run with Wolves, and that's Clarissa Pinkola. Estes, is that how you say it? Pinkola.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So
Oh, Lisa's put. I've been part of Claire's groups for some time. I absolutely love her and cannot wait for hugs again. Oh, so Claire, we've got 10 minutes left, and I wondered whether we could leave this conversation, which has just been fucking magic, by the way. You're just like such a breath of fresh air and
oh,
just so
thank you. It
nourishing in the
has
things
been
that you
lovely.
say. I just wondered whether there's anything that we could end with that you think might be a lovely gift for us, or some examples from stories, or
I think one really beautiful thing that I do, and I've always done since I was a little girl, that has helped a lot of people on the groups, is to just start weaving story and myth and symbolism into your daily life. So not doing anything any different, but like I walk in the park a lot of days, although I started off like in the pandemic, 6 o'clock every morning in the park, and now I'm like snuggling in bed at 10 o'clock in the morning. But
sounds like me.
is bringing the magic into the everyday. So you might be walking through a field and you're like, this is the field of crows, and I don't know whether when you were a little girl you might have done that, like name places. So everywhere seemed big and magical when we were little. So I used to walk up this busy road home, and there was all trees and stuff, and it was next to a main road, but I'd say, Mum, can we walk through the magic forest home? And she'd like say, yeah, come on, let's walk through the forest path. So it's carrying that into adult life. And some of our women have started doing this. So they said, I wait at the magic bus stop, and then they'll be like, and this old woman was there who was like Baba Yaga at the bus stop, and then I walked through the magic corridor at work. And then I went to say hello to the tree of plenty out in work in the garden. So it's about just weaving into your everyday life how magical everything is, and making it a little bit more enchanting. So you might, even have your daily cup of magic. And you have that daily brew to set you up for the day, but you might call it something different and start just weaving in that fairy tale kind of language into the everyday life. And now our women are like, telling me all these stories from their day. And then I went to the magic tree, and then I went to the river of possibility and put my wishes in there. So,
Oh,
so
so
just,
beautiful.
I suppose what it's about is not losing that childhood belief in wonder and magic and
And hope as well.
and all the magic characters in our life.
Yeah.
Whether they're difficult or fabulous or annoying, they're all just characters in the journey of our life. So also seeing that as well. And there's a lovely quote someone told me years ago about, if you just look at something that's happening in your life as an incident, it can feel devastating, heartbreaking, overwhelming. But if you see it as part of your bigger story and something that has to happen for the next chapter, it kind of gives you a bigger perspective on life. And I kind of look back on, the breakdowns that I've had, the terrible relationships, the devastating things that have happened, and see them as an important chapter, that brought me to where I am today, then it's helpful, So we're all in our own magic stories, aren't we, really?
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose then it's up to us how we kind of tell that story, perceive that story, and how much magic we want to be in the story. Because that's it, isn't it? Life is as magical as you make it, I suppose, isn't it? And there's so much of the mundane, but there is also so much magic. But it's how much we kind of play with that, I suppose,
I
and
think,
welcome it in.
luckily, I've never lost that childhood wonder in the world, and I'm very grateful for that. I've still got a really strong little inner child. Um, and one thing that a lot of women say back to me, things that I've said to them over the years, and one thing I say a lot is, oh, it might be fucking terrible what you're going through, but it'll make a really good chapter in the book of your life. I mean, imagine getting to this chapter that you're in, and you'd be like, what the fuck is going to happen next in this? And it's an interesting chapter. So then people type back to me, Claire, I know you're having a bad time, but what a fucking interesting chapter this is going to be.
How magic. What a lovely way of being and coping and feeling healing by looking at everything like a story, and that it hasn't ended either, like that nothing is fixed, because the story,
Yeah.
there's another page and there's another chapter, and yeah. Oh, you feel like I just need to snuggle up now with a really beautiful book.
I've got this is a book that was published years ago, and it was called Love, Hope and High Heels, and now I couldn't get a pair of high heels on if I tried. It's like Love, Hope and Slippers, or Love, No Hope and a pair of slippers. But there's a little poem that I wrote, and it's the last page of the book, and it says, I have magic in my belly. I've got stardust in my mind. I know that I am powerful. I am my own warrior and my own happy ever ending. And, I like to say to that little girl that was me, that was in a terrible place when she was little, that look at this amazing little life I've made for us now, and the magic tree, and we get to live according to our own rules, and we get to make magic jewelry and wrap ourselves in clothes we've made, and I think she'd be really happy.
Yeah, and you're doing a really good job at keeping her happy as well, by the sounds of things. It's so beautiful, and it's just so lovely to have spent this hour with you. If people want to find out about your course and any of the other gorgeous, juicy offerings, as well as your beautiful women's empowerment mugs and jewelry and capes and cushions and all the sexy fucking magic woman stuff that you make and create, where can people find you?
So, like you said about the books, like you'll never have time to read all the books that you want to. I feel like that about my website, like I haven't got time to put everything in that I want, but my website has got a lot of magic on, so that's clarebeloved.com. And then
Just going to type
I'm
into the
like
chat.
always posting loads on Instagram and Facebook, not because I want more customers, or just because I love sharing the stories from my life and the pictures and stuff. So,
And I've just put your Insta handle there as well, clarebeloved.com, Clare Beloved, and I think you're just Clare Beloved on Facebook. Is that right?
I think so.
On FaceTV. Oh, this has been just such fucking magic, and
I hope it's inspired you to maybe open up Clarissa's book again.
it really has. It really has. I'm definitely going to go there. And I think, like with anything, you've got to be in the right place for things, haven't you? And I think some things are so much more easily absorbed if, it's taken in at the right time, when you're in the right energy of that.
Right time, and it's reassuring to know that most women have it on their bookshelves but have never fucking read it. And the other thing that they do is they say, oh, I bought that for all these women that are important to me in my life, and told them they have to read it. And I'm like, but you haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I'm just going to put pressure on everyone else. It's so refreshing to know that there's other women that haven't read it. Because I was like, when you told me that you trained with her, I was like, fuck, I'm going to have to admit to Claire that I haven't read it.
I've read every page of it either, but it is nice working through it with other people, and doing it as a duty group is lovely
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. Oh, it's just been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. And yeah, if you're watching this on the replay, you won't be able to see that I've popped in the chats Claire's details. So that's just on repeat, clairebeloved.com. On Insta, it's clairebeloved/artist, and she's Claire Beloved. You know, you've got another bit to your name on Facebook, haven't you, Claire?
It's Clare Jasmine Beloved.
Jasmine, that's it. Claire
I'm
Jasmine Beloved
giving you a
on
little flash of
Facebook.
my magic tree there. I don't know how the best way to do that is, but let me just try and do that.
Here she is. Oh my God, it's huge. So beautiful, and your garden's just magic. So thank you from all of us that have been on the
Oh,
call.
thank you
And
so
thank you
much.
for all the women who've turned in. Everyone's just been saying thank you. Really enjoyed listening. What a beautiful idea when you were talking about bringing more magic into your life. Lauren said, I'm just gushing with love for you both.
Oh, how
I could listen all night. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much. Oh, it hasn't shown in the chat yet, Kate. Oh, I don't know. Sorry, Nimara. I've put it in. But yeah, clairebeloved.com. If you type in Claire Beloved, I'm pretty sure you'll find her. And just let me know if you can't. Okay, so we're signing off now at exactly 1 minute past 8. We've done an hour immaculately. Lots of
So
love,
tuck
Claire.
yourselves all in, and maybe people will just read a little story to themselves tonight as well.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Such magic.
Oh, thank
Okay,
you
lots
so
of
much.
love. Thank you, Claire.
Night night.
Night night. Bye bye.